Welcome back to the podcast. This will probably be the first episode of 2025, I think. I don't know. I might have another one going out, whichever one I get edited first. But today we have Ariana on the podcast. She's a repeat guest from 2023. She was on the podcast. She's a
Mm.
coach and the director of coaching at Complete Human Performance, and she does a lot of awesome hybrid things, trail running and everything else. And she's a mom, trains really hard, did the Hypercon games. That was in 2024, I believe. And so I just wanted to have her on and chat about all things parenting, all things juggling, training with a busy schedule. Obviously, she's coached a lot of athletes as well, so has experience on the coaching side as well as now as a parent and on the athlete side because she did do the Hyperground games. I believe your son was less than a year old at that time, right?
Yeah, 8 months.
Yeah, so I just wanted to have her on and talk about all that because it seems like everybody's busy. Everybody's trying to juggle things today. Maybe it's always been this way, but it seems like everybody's busy. And so I thought people could get a lot of value out of that. Not that parenting is the epitome of busyness, but it might be the epitome of chaos and uncertainty. And
hmm
so juggling training, work, and everything else with that is, well, it's been a journey for me. So I'd like
Yeah.
to hear your take as a mom because no matter how much we try to balance the scales, there's biological differences in parenting as a mom versus a dad, no matter how balanced we try to make everything. And so I'd love to get your take on it as an athlete, as a mom, as a coach. So yeah, well, welcome back. If one thing I did forget to mention, I will put the podcast that she was on in the description if anybody wants to go back and listen to some more background of you and your coaching philosophy and everything else. But yeah, welcome
Thank you.
back.
Hi, I'm glad to be back. Thank you for inviting me back. Yeah, I think there's so much to talk about. I think too, because everyone's experience is different. As a mother, as a father, as parents, every baby is different. So there's always this sort of, I don't know, whenever I listen to parenting advice now as a parent, which honestly I think coaching prepared me a lot for, because when you're coaching, you sort of realize that there are like 600 ways to help someone with their diet, but 599 may not work. And you won't know until you try 599 and then you happen upon the 600. So like I think thankfully I had that background where I would take in information about parenting and then I would just filter it based on what was working for my child and what was working for me. But I think even then there's always this like constant feeling of like, oh my God, am I messing up? Am I doing the wrong thing? Having a first child is just kind of like I kept saying, like, how did they just send me home with him? They
Yeah,
didn't
it's harder to adopt a dog than it is. When we got
have a
home, I was like, that was crazy.
yeah, they just were like, bye. Hope you have a car seat. Adios. I'm like, oh my God, you guys just sent me home with this like future adult. And you have no idea if I'm qualified. But either way, yeah, it was really interesting. I think for women, and I think I'm just speaking for myself here, but other people may relate. There's a lot of pressure, especially during pregnancy. Now that we know that staying active is a benefit and we know that staying active is an option, there's a lot of pressure to be active during pregnancy as if it's going to prevent problems. It helps you stay healthy, but it's not going to prevent complications. It can help prevent some preventable ones, but some are totally not preventable. Like I got preeclampsia. So I trained all the way up until 8 months. I climbed a mountain in Switzerland with my dad at 7 months pregnant. It's not like I was active. I was running, I was as much as I could. I was hiking, biking, I was lifting, I was still squatting, over 200 pounds. I was still deadlifting up to 300 pounds up until around 7 months. So like I wasn't inactive. I was very active, and I still got preeclampsia, and I still had to be induced. And that's not, I think that's sort of my first sort of thing that I learned was that there's this idea that if you train, you'll be healthier and you'll have a healthy pregnancy. I think that's survivorship bias to an extreme. I think either you're going to have a healthy, easy birth or you're not.
hmm
And like you can take care of yourself during your pregnancy and do things that make you feel good and do things that help you stay sane during your pregnancy and continue to do the things that you enjoy in a healthy way. but they still may not result in a completely drama-free birth, and it's not your fault. And it's the same thing with bouncing back. Like, I didn't bounce back. I don't think I'm bounced back still, and it's almost been 2 years. Like, it's been a year and a half almost. So, I think there's a lot of pressure on women while they're pregnant to have a healthy pregnancy and have a healthy birth and take care of themselves and do all the right things so that they have a healthy birth. And like, there's so much, I don't want to say marketing, but marketing aimed at mothers where it's like, here's how to have a healthy birth. Here's how to have a healthy birth. Here's how to have bounce back. Here's how to breastfeed. Here's how to do that. Like, this shit's hard. And if it doesn't work, it's not your fault. Period, full
Mm.
stop. So everything I say after this, my experience, everything that I've done, if it's not working for you or hasn't worked for you or this wasn't your experience, it's not your fault.
Yeah, I
Period.
mean, being there with my wife when she gave birth, I was like, this is insane. People do this every single day. And I just live my life. I go through the drive-through, I do whatever. And at this moment, somebody's going through this. And it was the craziest thing to me that I don't know. As a dad, I've never like really cared about birth until my wife got pregnant and everything. And it was
Mm.
just so crazy to me. But yeah, it's funny. I was going to bring up survivorship bias, and then you brought it up. And I mean, it is true. You can do everything right. I think it's just statistics. Statistically, maybe you're going to reduce a chance, but if it still happens, it's not because you didn't do anything right. It's just statistically, there's so many people giving birth, things are going to happen.
Incredibly stressful on the body. It's a huge amount of stress. I mean, your blood volume almost doubles as a woman while you're pregnant. I mean, I was up to almost 215 pounds, so my BMI was massive. There was a lot of strain on my heart. There was a lot of fluid. I had a lot of fluid retention. I was supporting and growing a creature. It would make sense that some people's bodies, just for whatever reason, have a harder time, and it could be a problem in one pregnancy and not the next.
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk about this is because I think you've done kind of a really good job of it for people that follow you closely of sharing some of the not so great things. But a lot of people, even if you're not intending to quote unquote market, they just see the outcome of things. I didn't have pregnancy, getting back in shape from pregnancy. I didn't have all of that, but I still had kind of crazy schedule things. And on the outside, 2024, I accomplished some really cool things, but it was a really stressful period. I was the least consistent I had ever in 2024 than I've ever been. And I was actually working on a blog post on that because the coaching experience did help because I knew what to focus on with the limited time I did have, and it helped me do things. But it wasn't like the most fun year. I did some cool things, but it wasn't the most fun year training wise. It was probably one of the least fun years training wise, just because it was like always hitting a brick wall of schedule or of whatever of learning new skills.
And then, like, your whole life is like, nah,
Yeah.
you better reevaluate. Yeah, I think it was the same for me. I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself just because obviously, I mean, I know I have health issues on top of things. So I was just really careful to try and make sure that my pelvic floor was recovered. I waited all 6 weeks, just did very gentle stuff, but they don't really tell you like how often you're going to be sitting up with your baby. Like, was like all the time, I'm like, I'm doing ab exercises, I'm squatting down, I'm picking him up. Like, I'm actually doing a lot. Um, but I mean, even just in the first 3 months, I lost close to 30 pounds just from fluid and baby and placenta and all that stuff. And I didn't do anything different. I actually was like the least active I've ever been. So, like, again, I think there's this big push to like get back to it and start training because you want to like lose all this weight and get back to how you were pre pregnancy or whatever, at least for women. And I think that is such an unnecessary stress because to a certain extent, the weight's going to come off, at least a chunk of it. You probably won't lose weight while you're breastfeeding unless you're one of those people who magically does because you are so hungry. I felt like I wanted to eat the entire world the entire time. My blood sugar was constantly up and down. I was constantly eating. I wasn't sleeping. Those are like all that's like the recipe for having the worst experience with weight loss ever.
Mm.
You're not sleeping. You're not in control of when you eat. You're not in control of what you eat. Like,
Your moods probably
Oh,
with the hormones and
terrible.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, again, I feel like that was probably, I think I had an easier time navigating that because of my experience coaching. It was very easy for me to be like, I'm getting all of this incoming messaging of people being like, oh yeah, you're gonna bounce right back. You're so fit. You're gonna be fine in like 2 months. We'll see you back in the gym like immediately. And then I didn't come back immediately, and people were like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Just had a baby.
Yeah.
I just had a baby. Leave me alone. Um, but yeah, I think I was able to move through that messaging maybe a little bit easier than most, but I'm known for being fit and I'm known for exercising and I'm known for being a coach. So people were like, "Oh, that's your personality. You're going to be right back to it. You're going to bounce right back." And there was a lot of anxiety when things weren't happening fast enough, even though I knew that I had chosen not to gut myself to make this happen. Around the like 2 to 3 month mark, I was like, "Oh my God, like I'm not doing enough. I'm not training enough. I'm not losing weight fast enough." Newsflash, it's almost a year and a half later. I still feel that way. So like I probably could have just relaxed and enjoyed being a mom a bit more at that time.
Yeah, and
Like
on the outside, it looks like you did the Hypercon games, like you're still very active.
so
So again,
hard.
people see this and they're just like, "Oh, that she's doing everything perfectly and I suck." It's so easy with social media, even though, to your, oh God, I can't think of the word, but you do share a good amount of kind of everyday life. And so it's not that you're purposely only putting out good things because that's not what you do. But I think it's just the nature of social media is people only see good things. So, I started out the podcast with this idea of we're both busy, we're both parents. There's this difficult thing of people putting up on a pedestal, being busy, hustle, right? And so I definitely don't want that to be the message of this. Like we're parents, like what are you doing? You're not a parent. And so as somebody who's worked through different phases of life, now you're a parent and worked through different phases of busyness and worked with athletes. One of the things I really wanted to ask is how you would define busyness,
Mm,
because certainly there's people with a lot of different levels of busyness that all might feel the same level of stress, the same level of busy, but if you look at their schedule, it's vastly different.
mhm.
So, if you're working with multiple different people, or you at different phases of your life, like what are your thoughts overall over the term busy or feeling busy?
I think busy and feeling the anxiety associated with being busy really boils down to how many daily decisions you're being forced to make. I think some people, whether in their partnership or in their lifestyle, their communication habits, they might be better at delegating. Their partner might be better at just picking up tasks without asking. And this goes both ways. Their jobs may require less decision making, and or maybe they're, staying at home, or I think it just comes down to the amount of decisions everyone has to make. And I think for some of us, especially those of us who may have ADHD, or maybe like we've just never had to be super regimented before with our time. Um, there are a lot of daily decisions that we're making simply because we haven't decided what kind of person we're going to be in advance or what kind of choices we're going to make in advance. We don't have like a rubric. So every single second, it's like choosing what to wear every hour almost. It's it's mentally exhausting. So someone's list of things that they did that day might be far shorter than someone else, but they may have made double the decisions, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of it comes down to decision fatigue and not compartmentalizing and not ranking importance of organic decisions. So like as an example, you might have one person who they've time blocked their calendar in advance. They've already made a decision about what they're going to do in the morning. And it might not be down to the very second, but it's like during this hour, I'm going to do these things. And I do this, and this. They don't ask themselves, do I want to do this? Do I feel like doing this? They're like, I already know there's a benefit of doing XYZ. So for me, it might be making sure the baby's bottles get washed after overnight. Do I want to do it? No. I hate washing bottles. I hate it. But I know that if I get it done, they'll be dry and I don't have to worry about it anymore for the rest of the day. So, like, if I have to, I'll strap the baby to me. This is when he was smaller, but even now, if he's just having a rough morning and I make sure everything gets washed, the kitchen gets cleaned up, and everything gets put away, that way I have a clean slate for the day. It takes me all of 10 to 15 minutes. I don't give myself the option of not doing it because it's just something that has to get done. So to me, it doesn't necessarily feel very busy. But imagine someone waking up in the morning and then being like, "Do I do this now or do I do this later?" That's a decision, and then all of a sudden, when you put off that decision, it's something else you have to do later and decide to do later. And I think some people are just more naturally better at planning and sort of that executive function. And this is not related to ADHD at all. I think some people are just better or more practiced at it. And other people have made their whole lives go by being able to like make decisions by the seat of their pants. They've never had to plan ahead. They've never had to make those decisions ahead of time. So I think sometimes when there's a life change, whether it's children, whether it's a new job, whether it's a commute, it could be anything. And it introduces less time and less energy for those decisions. All of a sudden, their system collapses. But it was a house of cards, I guess you could say, the whole time. Um, I think that contributes the most to the sensation of being busy because I've seen and coached like mothers of 4 children with full-time jobs who have an easier time implementing changes because they're so regimented than a girl who's in college with no job. Like,
Yeah.
that's just my experience, but like, I don't know, does that ring true for you or does that seem
I think that definitely rings true. I think for me personally, the biggest things were I was very regimented. We actually worked together nutrition coaching for a while, so you know how regimented I can be and kind of I love spreadsheets and everything else. But everything in my life at the time was very
fluid?
certainly controllable in the sense
Mhm,
that having a kid is a very uncertain thing. You have no idea when their emotions are going to turn, when they're going to get sick, all of these things. And so that was a skill that I'm still working on, but
mhm,
dealing with more of the uncertainty because I could even when we worked together, my life was very certainly uncertain. And so I could plan for uncertainty because I knew how it was going to show up. And then the kid was a whole new dynamic. And it's made me certainly made me a lot better at these tasks. And then also for me, just the perfectionism of things was a really hard one. The all or nothing thinking of I had a few months early last year when I was missing a lot of workouts and I was like rightfully thinking, other people will handle this and like there's something I'm missing here. Like this isn't a moral blame on myself. It's there's a skill that I'm missing here. And I realized it was just the fact that I really cared about my training, wanted to go get it in and wanted to go get the whole session in, which wasn't possible for some periods of time. So I switched it from, anything in life worth doing is worth doing partially. Like if this is an important task to me, I'm gonna go in and at least do the first couple sets, first couple exercises. And then if I legitimately don't have the time, not an excuse, legitimately don't have the time, that's it. That's a win for the day. So for me, I think those were two big things, perfectionism and just dealing with true uncertainty with a
yeah.
kid. It's so different.
Yeah, I think it really changes your perspective of what actually not having any control of your life feels like. Like, like, Merrick is just sick for a whole week, and he started in a new classroom as well, so he's been super off because of that, and it's all understandable, and I feel terrible for him, but also I haven't slept. He's been home from school more often than not because he's been so sick, and then he got sick again, like, a week later, and then I get
Mm,
sick. So, like, I think I've been to the gym maybe 6 times in the last month, and it's
yeah.
snowy, roads are covered, and I can't take him out in the stroller, there's nowhere to take him unless I'm, like, in the middle of the road. There's just so many things where I'm like, I had my system pretty down up until winter, and then the weather itself presented me with some resistance, and, flu season happened. I don't have any solutions currently for this. So, like, but instead of blaming myself for being hard on myself, I just tried to use every single day or missed session as a lesson, or I was just kind of like, what can I do instead? Or maybe I can just rest because I'm sick.
Mm.
We'll figure it out. There's also that sense of catastrophizing, I think, that can happen when you're a perfectionist, which I do a lot, where it's like, if I miss too many workouts in a row, I feel like I'm losing my grip on my life
Mm.
and it escalates. And I'm like, oh my God, everything is so awful and I'm never going to get my fitness back and it's never going to happen. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's been 1 month. It's been 1 month. It's been, 2 difficult weeks. Yeah, it feels annoying, but like, I'm still healthy. My baby's still healthy. Everything's going to be okay. And in 2 months, I'm not really going to remember what happened this month.
Mm.
It's just gonna be a memory. It's gonna be something that happened. But yeah, choosing to do less has also been interesting for me because my training schedule has always been like a bro split. I've always done heavy singles and back down sets. It's just always been what's worked best for me in the past. But now, since baby, I don't have the energy to hit those heavy singles and I get too sore and I'm too inconsistent. So I've had to completely restructure my training. Completely. So now I do like full body days every day.
Mm.
Just whatever feels good, I do. I just
Yeah.
walk around the gym and just work a body part, and then I just try not to do it the next day too much. But that's been working so much better for me. I actually don't have a plan right now. I don't write it down because the second I write it down, I start to judge myself based on whether or not I accomplish it. And I have a lot more fun in the gym when I just walk around and go, I really want to do the V squat machines today, or I want to do the hack squat, or I think I'll do some single leg press. And I just do that.
Yeah,
And
that's
yet,
so interesting. It's just so interesting how people think about things differently because for me, it's kind of the opposite where on my low energy days, I can go in and hit a heavy single and like one set, but the thought of doing more than two exercises is overwhelming in the sense of
yeah,
a time. Like I know I can get in 15 minutes, like hit a heavy single and like a back off set or two, and then be out. And it's 15 minutes versus and having a plan is also one of those things where I don't have to think about it. It's the decision fatigue. For me,
yeah.
having a plan when I'm super busy is exactly what I need. Whereas for some people, it's the opposite of what they need because I can definitely understand and empathize with it putting pressure on you at that point. So
I'm
that's
like,
very
I
interesting.
today, like, I just can't do this today. But I think that comes too from like maybe spending most of my life with a chronic illness. I think I also kind of have a bigger toolbox
Mm.
for dealing with my body just not working the way I want it to. I think that's also really helped me just be a little bit less emotional about it. It didn't prevent me from getting postpartum depression, that's for sure. But I think in that sense too, maybe I just have it still doesn't feel like decision making to me. Because I think to me, the really exhausting decisions come from me being like, can I execute this workout that's planned for me today? Do I have the energy to do it? If I start doing it, am I going to spend all 15 minutes I have to work out working up to a heavy single I can't execute?
Mm.
So it's sometimes for me, it's just easier to just choose to do some reps, 70, 80%, stick to like 7 to 8 RPE, 2 reps in reserve, and just accumulate volume
Mm.
and then go home.
Yeah, definitely. And that's also down to your goals, right? Because you could spend the same amount of time working up to a heavy single and one back off set that you could do like three or four other exercises at like a RPE 7 or something potentially. And so for
Yeah.
me, I was just trying to keep as much strength as possible while I was doing my ultra training.
Mhm.
So for me, it made a lot more sense to just go in and push the heavy singles.
Yeah.
If my goal is general health and being as healthy as possible, probably would have gone the other way of let's get a good amount of volume in this amount of time and move on. Metabolic health, overall muscular health.
When
Yeah,
I was training for the Hypercon games, I was more careful to do like there was a heavy deadlift, so I would deadlift twice a week. Like I was more careful to do the movements that were going to be in the Hypercon games, and I did a lot of running. So I was more specific. But now that the Hypercon games are past, I'm doing a strongman competition this weekend, but I've dropped to novice because I've been sick for so long. I just don't.
mm,
don't feel safe picking up a 185-pound stone. But now that the Hypercon games have passed, I also find myself a bit resistant to signing up for events that are going to limit my training. And I say limit because I am very careful to do the exercises that are going to appear in the competition, but at the detriment of, like you said, almost my general fitness and my general well-being. Uh, I I don't want to say I got weaker. I definitely got a lot stronger training for the Hypercon games, but there were so many things that I think I should have done more of. I just didn't have time for because I was focusing on learning how to swim and like doing
Mhm.
all this other little stuff. So I've actually made the decision to not do any events this year besides like fun ones where I can just dip in and dip out because I just want to rebuild my base. I think that's kind of what I'm struggling with. Is not having a strength base, not having an aerobic base. I can make these one-off performances happen on a perfect day, but I can't get consistent. And I think for me that I need to back off, me
Mhm.
personally, and just kind of rebuild a much more comprehensive strength base, mobility, and then build back up again. I think something I experienced, I don't know if you experienced this, but I'm really good at doing certain movements, but the strength may not be there or the recovery may not be there. So I could actually deadlift 300 some pounds right now, but then I'll be sore for days.
Mhm.
Or like I could perform, several sets of squats at 200 some pounds, but then I'll have DOMs for the next week. So like I'm incredibly efficient and I'm incredibly good at performing these exercises, but I'm not necessarily prepared physically, physiologically to be performing them. I'm just really good at the execution. I don't know if you've ever experienced that where you can do it, you can lift it, but then like the next couple days you're like, why do I hurt so bad? I don't know if it's just me, but
For me, it tends to come with volume, especially lower body. Heavy, I definitely am built better to lift than to run. So I have to work very hard at running. I have to work hard at lifting as well, but less so. So heavy singles, doubles, triples don't leave me too sore. It's more just if I decide to throw in 3 by 12 reverse lunges or something, or anything higher than that,
yeah.
that kills me. But yeah, I mean, for the ultra prep I just did, it definitely was at the detriment of my overall athleticism and health and feeling good. Apologies, my dog is barking at the. Can you hear him? Can you hear my dog? Oh,
Nope.
cool. Zoom does a good job. So, but yeah, it was definitely at the detriment of my overall health and athleticism and feeling kind of enjoying things even at the end because I was so busy with all the running. For me, it was a very calculated decision of, I think, I read this a long time ago when I first started kind of coaching and learning training that in order for the body to adapt, it has to think it's dying, which is you don't want to take that to the extreme, obviously, but you have to pull the body out of homeostasis and then it'll adapt. And I've heard other people translate that to kind of emotional growth and task growth and kind of mental growth. And you have to be uncomfortable to grow. That was kind of a long way to say a very simple thing. But for me, the ultra was a very end date thing of I'm going to train for this and it's going to be difficult, but it's doable. And I'm going to learn a lot about my own time management or about, all of this stuff. And now that it's over, I'm in kind of the same place of general health. I might throw a powerlifting meet in just because it's a fun thing to do, and it's kind of already how I train. So it's not something that I'm gonna have to really pay attention to and change things for. Keep general aerobic health, metabolic health, and athleticism, and have fun with training. Because yeah, the running for the ultra just took so much time that is at a premium right now in my life. So I'm
Mhm.
very much in the same place as you are for this year.
It's funny
But
that you say about discomfort leading to growth. Alex and I have actually been discussing this a lot. Now my dogs are barking and has nothing to do
I
with you.
can't hear him. We're good.
Perfect. There's just been a lot of talk recently about like making yourself uncomfortable in order to grow and develop. And I think that's very important. And it was a huge part of me becoming fit. So if you listen to my previous podcast, I think we talked about this, but I think something that's missed relatively often is that the outcome has to be positive. The outcome has to be positive. If you are just putting yourself through discomfort just for the sake of discomfort, you have to remember that people come back from war with PTSD. They don't come back mentally better, they come back mentally worse. So I think as civilians, being able to choose something uncomfortable, and the worst thing that happens is that we're on, crutches for a week or whatever it may be, we have to remember that we're still choosing something with a positive outcome. It's uncomfortable, but it's not that bad. So I think there's also that kind of like we need to back down the self-glorification that comes with choosing to do uncomfortable things. Not that you did this. I think you were very intelligent about it and you chose how you challenged yourself. You monitored the outcomes and you've taken positives from it and you've applied them to your life. But I see a lot of people who are like, I'm going to run a marathon because it's hard and I want to prove to myself that I can do it. And then they end up hating running, never running again, and not even running the marathon.
Mm,
That's not positive. Like
yeah.
how is that positive? Or, they run the marathon, but they hate the whole thing and they never run again.
Mm,
What did you get from that? That you can force yourself to do something uncomfortable for 5 hours? All of us can. All of us can. Of course you can. But what did you get from it? So I think it's also important, like for me right now, when I'm choosing events or when I'm choosing training goals or when I'm choosing ways to stretch myself, I am very aware of the positive outcome I'm looking for. Why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? So when I did the Hypercon games, I wasn't really prepared for it at all. It was brutal. I mean, even the most prepared athletes that were there got destroyed. Most of us didn't train again for almost 2 weeks after it. It was 18 events over 3 days. We camped. None of us slept. There was not enough food. There was not enough water. It was brutal. I got heat exhaustion on day one. I pulled my calf in the first event, so I limped the entire weekend. Um, and my because of insufficient fluids, heat, and all the training, my blood pressure went nuts. So like by the last day, I was so weak. I, I participated, we could say, but I didn't go to place and I didn't go to perform. I went so I could see my friends
mm.
because it was me and like 30 people that I love on an island. And I got to travel to Catalina Island and spend time with my friends and be involved in the fitness community that I love. And that to me was the takeaway. That was what I went for. So I was miserable. I had a terrible time. It took me almost 3 weeks to recover when I got home. And quite honestly, I've had to go on medication because of potentially a lot of the stress that I went under when I was there. I don't think that I've recovered from. So I've recently had to start medication for my blood pressure, which I've never had to be on before. So like you can say there are a lot of negatives with me going. I did not do well. I was like last or second to last or something like that. But I didn't go to place. And I knew that going into it. I knew that my training was insufficient. I didn't care. I don't like performing badly, but like I didn't care because I knew I was going to perform badly. I went to hang out with my friends, and I did. I got to sleep in a tent, 5 of them, and I got to meet a bunch of new people and be involved in sort of the hybrid space and this really cool event. They just finished the documentary for it, and it's awesome. It was rough. It was really rough. During it, I did not have fun. There are a lot of moments where I was not having fun, but I was with my friends, and so it didn't matter. Um,
Is that type 2
and
fun?
yeah, oh, type 2 awful. But, there's just a lot of people I see that grab onto that, "Oh, I need to grow by torturing myself," essentially, and it's like, "No, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're stretching yourself so you can remind yourself what you're capable of, and the takeaway needs to be positive." I survived all 18 events. I participated in all 18 events. Even when I didn't even wanna wake up in the morning or get out of bed. I woke myself up, put on a bathing suit, and jumped into a freezing cold ocean, not really knowing how to swim. Like, I can do hard things, I know that. It's not really why I went. I went to hang out with my friends. I think that's why the whole experience was so enjoyable, and that's what I remember the most. I remember singing weird songs and, like, the chats I had with friends more than I remember any individual event, to be honest.
Yeah, I
And so I
think that sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. I just think there is a lot of glorification of people that are say hospitalized after ultras or during ultras because they push themselves so hard. And
Yeah.
it's that perfectionist viewpoint of I have to finish this. And in the past, as an athlete in school and afterwards, the best performances I've had are when I cared less, as you said, and just went to enjoy it because you put so much pressure on yourself that you then perform worse. And yeah, for me, for the ultra, while I was on crutches for 2 days, it was not a week, but I was on crutches for a day and a half roughly. It was not a bone issue, so clearly I'm fine now. But for me, it was definitely a thing of I'm going to go out here and have fun. And I think it's different now that I have a son, because he, as a dad, he's always mimicking me, looking at me. Not that he doesn't mimic my wife as well, but it is a little bit of a different dynamic. And so I was constantly thinking, like, what do I want to show him? I certainly don't want to show him the extreme of I'm going to destroy my body or my mental health for this goal because that's not, like you said, there's no reason to do that. But I also want to show healthy struggle and healthy striving. And so I was kind of constantly reevaluating that every time I'd go on a run. It was actually great, my training runs, because it forced me to get outside and relax because my brain just does always run. And so the training was fun. And then I got out to the race. My foot started to hurt pretty early on, and I did put some of those mental techniques in place of, you eat the elephant one bite at a time, shrink the world to the next mile. And then by the time I stopped, I was literally thinking about the next 10 steps because my foot hurt so bad. And it was one of those senses of I could barely really put weight on my foot. And I sat there and I was like, I have like 5 miles to go to finish this. I could grit my teeth and like disassociate from my body and finish, but there's no reason to. And at this point, I have proven myself like I know I could finish this. I could
Mhm.
potentially hurt my foot for an even longer period of time. I don't know. 5 miles is a long time to walk on a foot that you can barely put weight on. And so I was like, again, what do I want to show my son? What kind of example do I want to set? Do I want to destroy my body for this recreational 50K that I came to do and have fun and kind of show myself that I have these mental techniques still? Or like to prove something to myself that I don't shouldn't need to prove? Or do I want to show healthy striving, healthy work ethic, and healthy quote unquote failure? And yeah, I mean, I'm super happy with how it went.
Good.
Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know. I think that was a really big moment because if I did kind of dissociate and push through, I would have finished and it would have been fine. Who knows how much longer my foot would have been injured, but also like it wouldn't have been for positive mental benefit at that point.
Yeah, it would almost be like punishing yourself, in a roundabout way.
It
It's funny.
would exactly be that.
Yeah. I did something really similar, for the Crucible. The first year, like the second year that we did it, I did the Spartan Games right before, and I came home with rhabdo from the Spartan Games. So I was barely recovered from rhabdo, but I wanted to do the 6-hour run. So I did a 1.6 mile loop, and midway through that loop, and I was stopping often, my foot, there's a bone on the side that can sort of dislocate, sublux, and it did. It's not a break, but it makes running impossible. It hurts so bad. It's like on the outside side of the foot. And I was like, all right, I'm just gonna run until I can't walk, run, and then I'll walk, and then I'll call it. And I was at 25.6 miles. And I was like, I need to do a marathon. And like my brain was like, you're a loser if you don't do this marathon. And I was like, well, that's the reason I should just stop right now. Like, this was already dumb of me to do. Like, I'm literally still recovering from rhabdo. This is dumb. My foot is screaming. I'm limping. My hips are starting to hurt because I'm limping so much that like my hips are becoming like off. My back hurts. I think I limped for like 10 miles. I was like, I'm done. So I stopped at 25.6 miles. So close to my first marathon. So close. But I
Yeah.
didn't set out to run a marathon. That's not what I just wanted to see how far I could go in 6 hours. And I made it about 25.6 miles until my foot hurt too bad. And that was fine. And I look back on it and I feel no regret. None. I know I could have limped that last mile. I know it. What would it have given me?
Rhabdo's no joke. I can't believe you went out and did that. We've talked about Rhabdo before because I have a friend that years ago we discussed this, and I know
Mhm.
more people than I would have told you 10 years ago. I would probably know who have had Rhabdo at this point with ultras and the military and things. It's no joke, man.
Oh, I know, it was stupid. It was stupid. Like the whole thing was stupid. But it was one of those things where I was like, I've already proved too much to myself. Like even just coming back from like the Spartan Games and doing that whole thing proved so much to myself. I'm like, what else do I need to, like, I'm done. And I just called it. I went home. And I'm so glad I did because my foot got better in like 2 to 3 days and I was right back to it. But yeah, very similar thing where I was just kind of like, I'm so close to this arbitrary goal, but I think I got everything I needed out of this. So I'm done. And it's funny, my one friend was like, why didn't you run a marathon? You were so close. And I was like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It's so funny how good things, exercise, can be taken to such an extreme so easily, to where it becomes just as unhealthy, or arguably just as unhealthy as the opposite, which is
Yeah,
not doing it.
maybe we'll use that word.
What was that?
Maladaptive.
Maladaptive. That's a better one. Yes. Yeah, it's so funny how easy it is to do that. And you even mentioned like you mentioned people setting these big goals, and it's so funny because to me a 50K felt so short because I know so many people that do such long ultras that it almost felt like I don't know. It felt like I should be able to do this. This is such a short distance, even though it is longer than a marathon, which is
Yeah.
a long race. It's kind of funny, just the world you surround yourself in. All of a sudden, really big things become like not that big of a deal, it seems like.
Yeah, well, because you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, and constantly comparing your achievements to other people. And it can really suck the joy out of an otherwise really fantastic accomplishment. I mean, I don't know how many times I've talked to a client and they're like, oh, well, it was just a 5K. And I'm like, it was your first 5K ever. And you couldn't run a year ago. Like, why are you downplaying it?
Also, maybe a hot take, I don't know, but I think an all-out mile is more painful than an ultra marathon.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. Because you set out for that ultra. I mean, there are people who run all out ultra marathons and they're insane. But for the most part, most of us run them, I would say, like zone two, zone three.
Hmm.
We're not really racing them. Again, people who race them, different stuff. But for most,
Relatively, though, they're still at a low intensity, though,
so much
based on
lower.
their health, or
And all
based on their
mile is
fitness.
awful.
An all-out mile, an all-out 5K, I go back and forth between which one is the worst distance, an all-out mile or an all-out 5K.
10K for sure. Because you're
See,
like the lactic, like that's your lactate threshold, like that 10K kind of distance. I feel like torturing yourself for 45, 40 minutes is just, I don't know, it's two
maybe it's
5K.
because I ran cross country, but I think the 5K distance is more painful because the
Yes, for
10K,
sure.
like, yeah, the 10K you actually pace over the hour. It's an all out for the however
Yeah.
long, an hour or less or whatever, but it's an all out 10K, but you pace a little bit just different. But yeah, 5K is basically it's like the difference between the 400 and the 800. The 800 is just a 400 that you have to do another lap for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. No, anything's awful really if you're going all out. But yeah, no, I agree. The mile is so hard. And I think that's also why, like, when people are talking about how they just did a 6-minute mile, so their next goal is a 5-minute mile, I'm like, buckle up for the next 4 years. Like, or you're gonna have to devote yourself to being a runner if you want to get this done in 1 to 2.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard. Going from a 6-minute mile to a 5-minute mile is like going from a 450-pound deadlift to a 600-pound deadlift.
Yeah,
The
I was 165 pounds and now I'm like 215. I was 165 pounds and ran for 6 years very seriously and ran a 502. Never got under five. A 5 minute mile or below is insane.
And it's nuts. Like that guy that just ran, what was it, like a three something?
Yeah.
Disgusting. But yeah, I anything can be difficult if you apply yourself and challenge yourself with it. It doesn't have to be what someone else has done. It doesn't have to be an arbitrary distance, even. That's why I love mountain running because the distances are so random. They're so random. It's a friggin' mountain. It's a rock. Like distance to the top, 1.58 miles. Distance to the bottom, not 3, like or whatever. Like It's or like, 3.1, not quite a 5K, and there was 1,000 feet of climbing in the middle of it. So is it a 5K? Not really.
That's
That's why I love
brutal.
that, like, it's this constant bitch slap of like, yeah, this is the hardest thing you've ever done, and it means absolutely nothing because you can't compare it to anything else.
Mm,
That effort is literally only it only applies to that one mountain. It's completely not comparable to any other mountain unless it's like a duplicate, which none are. That's why I love it so much, I think, because maybe it's because I'm just a rebellious person, but I feel like distances and running and weightlifting too, there's just so many arbitrary things that we put out there because they're standardized. And we've chosen these arbitrary standardized distances and these arbitrary standardized weights, like 2 times body weight or whatever. But it's really fun to step outside of that sometimes and just have some fun and explore your fitness and not know where you can measure up, like, compared to anyone else. Just was it a good effort? Did you push? Did you have fun? That's why I personally love mountain running. But because then the next time you run it, it's just you versus you, legitimately, because you have no idea what anyone else is doing out there or how they ran it. It's just you trying to run it a little bit faster the next time.
yeah. That's what I enjoy about, well, we don't have mountains here. They're like 4 hours away. But that's what I enjoy about the, whole hybrid space. When I did my powerlifting meet, I was super happy, hit all my PRs, didn't place very well. And the guys were like, yeah, like, you want a beer? Like, let's go out for a beer. And I was like, I got a 12-mile run tomorrow morning. And they were like, running?
Yeah,
What?
you're crazy.
Yep. And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things of it is really just you against you because most people aren't doing all of that. And if they are, they're normally not the type of people. I don't know. Most of the people I've met that do multiple different things, they're not going to be the type of person that comes over and is like, hey, I did that mile like 3 seconds faster than you, and then I lifted also like 5 pounds more than you in this, yesterday. You know that, right?
Yeah, it's just
Super
everyone's
welcoming.
yeah, everyone's like, "Oh, sweet, you did that." I think too, if when you're in the hybrid space, you're like very much aware of the sacrifices you're making. Like you said, you went from 165 pounds to 200. The power you have to put down now to go the speeds you used to go when you were 165 is probably nearly doubled. You know,
Yeah.
say you could do a running FTP, it probably used to be, you know, what, 200 or some 250 watts to run some, really nice 18-minute 5K. Now you probably have to put down 400 watts of power to run a 19-minute 5K. Like you have to do so much more work, exponentially more work because you've chosen to put on muscle and mass. I think in the hybrid space, we're very aware of that. Obviously, in running, that's why they're so thin most of the time, but I think we're choosing it. So we're also more likely to be like, yeah, that was actually pretty good. I'm not going to compare myself to other runners because arguably I'm nothing like them.
Mm.
Like, I have made this so much harder on myself in a demonstrable way. And yeah, just watching Alex run fast and he's 230 some pounds. The watts he puts down, he got a stride pod. But even on biking, the watts he has to put down to match the speed of someone who weighs, 170, it's almost laughable. They're so high.
Yeah.
They're
It's
so
funny too. I
high.
was I was 165 and my coaches were like, "Hey, you should probably like lean out some," because I was running with people that were like 130, which is so I don't know for like an
A lot of
18-year-old
people sort of
man like that's yeah
face.
yeah
But yeah, I
um
think that helps a lot when you're like, yeah, no, like I'm choosing to make this harder for myself because I'm choosing to be better at something else. So YOLO. And then that's kind of the hybrid attitude.
yeah yeah. I mean, it's really max fulfillment, not max performance, but max. I mean, max performance relative, but max fulfillment is what I look at. Where do I feel the most fulfilled, the most happy, the most in where do I enjoy the most? Because when I ran and just ran, it was fun, but I would go into a weight room and look at the squat bar and be like, oh, what's that? I don't know how to use that.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
No, you can do both. I think you should just make that like max fulfillment. Make that a thing. Make that a post.
Mm,
Uh, I like that.
yeah, that's a good one. I'll add it to I have a backlog of posts that I need to make. I get, these spurts of ideas and just put them in my Excel doc and then forget about them and then come back to them. But
I mean,
Um,
spreadsheet.
yep, yep. But yeah, I mean, it was really good to have you on. I know we were scheduled till 1. Snow is probably gonna start here soon, and the whole place is
Oh
gonna shut
God.
down.
Yeah, it's probably getting over there.
I
Snowed
know,
here.
right?
It's raining. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I feel like we just kind of babbled, but hopefully it was helpful to some people to just hear the differences in even how you and I approach things and then the similarities. Because yeah, everyone's different. Everybody's different. And either they're gonna feel like we're speaking their language or like we're speaking Gaelic. And there's no in between.
Mm,
And I think that's really normal. That's an extremely normal human experience. And that's why coaching, I think, is so essential in this space because it helps to have someone figure out what you need and what mental pushes you need and where you need to back off. And I think that's why having coaches like you in the space where you know what it's like to go through a major life change and have to change your entire decision making rubric, metric, whatever you want to think about it as, like, I think that's so important because now you know not only how to help someone else, I think you knew how to do that beforehand, but you have even more empathy and even more patience
mm,
for someone who's struggling because you're like, oh yeah, I know it took me a while to figure it out. That's that's why I'm still just like, if you can get coaching for even
mm,
a month, 2 months, have a consultation, speak to someone about your specific experience and dig into it because it's not going to be anyone else's, but it's probably similar enough
mm.
that someone can help you.
Yeah, even if it's just somebody telling you to stop being an asshole to yourself, and the fact that you do have a lot going on and you're doing great and you need
Yep.
to take some pressure off. I think that's huge.
Doing this a little bit more, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids make you do that, man. It goes so fast, and then you're like, oh, I really got to be present. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, honestly, it's amazing to talk to you. Every time I talk to you, literally everybody I know that knows you and talks to you says how awesome you are as a person and how great you are to talk to.
Thank you.
So it's really good to have you on.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot because usually I'm just like, what did I just say?
Yeah. Lastly, where can people find you if they want to see more about your journey or CHP or anything like that?
So me personally, I'm not really posting that much right now. But my Instagram, I just changed it. It is now my first name, Ariana dot Scalfo. There's my last name. And then for obviously Complete Human Performance, that's our Instagram. You can also go to our website, just search Complete Human Performance. And yeah, just a little bit more about, I think you and I share a lot of the same philosophy, methodology, and things like that. So probably if you like Justin, what he's doing, you'll also really like what we're doing, I think. It'll make the same amount of sense. So, yeah, that's where you can find me for the most part for it.
Definitely. Yeah. And there's a lot of really good informational posts on CHP, and your journey is awesome. So I'll put all that in the description.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, otherwise, I'm sure we'll do a third round at some point. So yeah,
For
I'll
sure.
probably be
We'll
talking to you
both be
soon.
totally different people at that point. So who knows?
Yep. All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Assemble Performance Podcast. It was really awesome to talk with Ariana. She's a great human, great coach, and I hope you got some value out of our rambling and our conversation. If you enjoyed this podcast, definitely go follow her and CHP. And I would really appreciate it if you left a rating or review, as that helps the podcast reach more people, helps me have more people on, and really do more of the good work that I'm trying to do here. With that said, I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to the last episode that I spoke with Ariana on back in October of 2023. It's linked below, and I will see you guys on the next episode of the Assemble Performance Podcast.